A great
Cheers.
evening and a great conversation. We just saw your great collection of whiskeys there, Vivek. Thank you so much for taking out time. And we've been discussing about doing this podcast for a very long time. I remember in 2020 reaching you for a small Instagram live segment, which you also took out time for. And now today in 2024,
Now we're actually doing live.
we are actually doing the live. Thank you so much, Vivek. I mean, Vivek doesn't need any introduction when it comes to digital marketing. All the people here know Vivek Bhargava for all the ET, AFAX to all the places where we keep seeing his amazing interviews with quotes coming and shocking us at times. The recent AFAX interview I got to know at 24 you started your journey as an entrepreneur, which is so inspiring, to be very honest, because you started in an age when nobody knew about digital. So I'm very inquisitive, Vivek. How did it all begin, for you? And was it? I mean, I'm sure it was not easy, but why digital? And how did digital happen?
So actually, it's a very interesting story. I would say the seed of entrepreneurship was sown in my mind when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
So I remember distinctly, I was sitting with my father and he asked me, Beta, do you know the difference between a job and business?
Okay.
So I said, like, I was thinking at 10 years old, I was just wondering whether I'm going to get batting in the evening when I go down to play cricket, right? So you're not thinking about life.
Life, yeah.
So I said, no. So he said, you know what? If you get a job, you have to spend less than what you earn. That will keep you happy and successful.
Okay.
But if you do business, then there is no limit to the amount of money you can spend. You just have to make sure that you earn more than that.
Okay.
So you want to spend ₹1 crore a day, not a problem. As long as you earn more than that, you can do business. So as a 10-year-old, I was thinking, I'm going to do business.
Wow.
So I think this is how business families encourage their kids to take up business instead of taking up a job. So I think in a way that DNA was already there, and then furthermore, it was reinforced by these kind of conversations with my father. But I think when I was 22, 23 years old, I was part of the family business, and we used to go abroad quite often. So we used to go for trade fairs, exhibitions, and one of those trips, I clearly realized the way America was using technology for marketing communication was a big lacuna area in the Indian corporate sector. People in India didn't know. They first of all very humble to do marketing and advertising, and using technology was even a bigger lacuna area. So at that age, I left the family business to start Communicate too. And the goal was very simple. I'll help companies in India use technology to make their marketing more effective. So that was the start of Communicate too. And the early days were very tough because there were hardly any internet users in the country. I still remember in the first 2 years, we were just making CD-ROMs. So most people do not know what CD-ROMs are, but we used to take the brochure of a company, put a CD-ROM in that brochure, which had a video of the company and had all the website in a CD-ROM in a way. And then we give the brochure back to the company and then tell them that now your digital transformation is complete because you have a CD-ROM in your brochure. but we did CD-ROMs for Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, we did CD-ROMs for Ban when they were launching in Hyderabad, the ERP company Ban. So we did some amazing CD-ROMs, but that was the start of Communicate too when there were no internet users in the country.
That's so interesting. I mean, I never thought, till you told me, because in Yellow Pages and initially a lot of people started incorporating the CD-ROMs, and whenever we as marketing students would go here and there to trade fairs, we started seeing them, early back in the days. Oh my God. That is how Communicate 2 started. Vivek, I don't know if you know, I was interviewed by Communicate 2, your company.
Is it?
Yeah, in Pune. So I was always intrigued, that how can someone know about Yahoo ads, because when I used to use Yahoo, this is before Google, and that time I would only see news blurbs, this, that, and I never thought you were actually building a company back then, using Yahoo and AdSense, before the AdSense came,
So actually Yahoo, they acquired a company called GoTo. GoTo was the person, I think his name is Bill Gross. He's the guy who started search marketing.
Okay.
And the patent that Yahoo owned on search, I think they gave $1 billion. They got $1 billion stock of Google in return for the patent. But if they had not sold that patent, then the entire search advertising, if they knew how much money Google was making, Google would have not been able to do search marketing. So basically, imagine that's what
Yahoo technology
is Yahoo. So they acquired a company called GoTo.
Okay.
It's a GoTo technology, but they had the patent for it. So in those days, I still remember we could buy search keywords for a month, as many clicks as you get, right? And basically We learned the nuances of search marketing in the early days. And Yahoo actually became a client of mine, where we were doing offshore work for Yahoo from Pune. So Yahoo was my client, and I was actually doing offshore work for Yahoo, which again gave us a lot of insights of how search works, right from, in a way, the
Before
masters of
Google.
search. One of my close friends and now my co-founder in Consumer AI is a guy called Aman Khanna. Aman Khanna used to work for Yahoo, and and because of that, we play table tennis together. And he's the one who was able to give this offshore work for us and introduce me to his boss, and that's how the work started. So if you look at life comes full circle, from communicate to now, this has happened, and now Aman is a co-founder with me.
That's great. Was it a difficult choice to get into a very uncharted domain, if I may say, a digital marketing agency?
So I think when I became a part of the family business, I used to get a lot of money as a 21-year-old. Right? We used to have 5-day weeks. We used to go abroad to trade fairs and exhibition every month, 2 months, and everything was taken care of. It's like a 50, 60-year-old business. So everything works like clockwork, right? Everything is a well-oiled machine. So I had a very rosy view of how our business is. But what I realized was that, see, the challenge that in our family business was that somebody wanted to place an order, a large order with us, and the quantity and the consistency required, we couldn't actually do it. Because of that, what happened was we realized that the industry had the limitation. If I want to build a $1 billion company, I think it was not possible to build a $1 billion company because no musical instruments company can be worth $1 billion.
Sure.
So I wanted to be in an industry where I'm limited by my own capability.
Sure.
So today in digital, in SaaS, in the companies that I'm building, one can build a $100 billion company. I may not build it because I'm not capable of building it. But the limitation of it is not coming from industry, it's coming from my own self. That's the reason I left the family business to start Communicate to. And again, started Consumer AI for the same reason, that you can create a large company. But I think at some level, right, I think the joy was amazing because you get a lot more freedom when you're running your own company.
Yeah, that's true.
So the way I look at it, that I went through a lot of hardships, but I think every hardship I learned a lot. I believe that happiness comes in the growth phase. So I think overall, if I look back, I'm so glad I left the family business and started this journey in digital.
It got me intrigued. That is my third question. What were your biggest challenges? One, you said that the challenge was the industry was not very big enough for you to sustain your family business, and you had a bigger goal, and glad you had a bigger goal, because we got a great marketer in India who knew digital, has seen the digital transform the way it has today. So, but what were the other challenges, if I may say, in 2000, early 2000s, when it came to selling digital as a marketing offering to people, brands?
I think if you ask me, right, I think the biggest challenge obviously was the number of internet users were really limited.
Yeah.
People didn't understand digital. So, if you take today, right, even the people who don't understand digital, at some level, they're doing video conferencing calls, they're using WhatsApp, they're using Pay, their grandkids are talking to them, social media they are aware of. But if you look at, early 2000s, people just didn't know digital. They didn't connect to the internet. So for them to understand digital or internet advertising, all those things were just impossible.
That's true.
So because of that, what happened was that the budgets would be very, very limited. People not even, like I remember I made a 3-hour pitch to this chairman of a large company to make a website. At the end of that 3 hours, he told me that, Vivek, now I'm convinced. So I thought he's convinced to make a website. He said, no, I'm convinced to now get an internet connection for the company. So they didn't even have an internet connection.
They didn't even have it.
So I said, listen, I'm not working for BSNL. I don't care if we make an internet connection, make a website, right? But the thing is, that's how at that point in time this was. So I think the biggest challenge was convincing CMOs to allocate budgets, finding talent who want to build their career in digital. So even hiring people was a big challenge. There was no funding available. Nobody knew digital. Plus, when the .com bust happened, so .com boom happened and then bust happened, right? Here, .com came in and then bust happened immediately. So basically what happened was, I still remember we were working with Unilever on Pond's Cold Cream project. They had invested 20 lakh rupees in a website. They had given us an advance of, I think, 10 lakh rupees or something. It was the biggest project in India.
Wow.
And then they just shelved the idea of making a website.
Just because of the...
So basically during when the .com busted happened, people would not touch with you over the barge pole. So everybody just withdrew. So if you were in digital, you were this truth person who nobody wanted to touch.
The first time I was very fascinated with the whole beverages industry was when I saw the Coke and the Pepsis. You know, they were doing the best campus placements to the best marketing spends to all agencies wanted to work. That is how my introduction happened to the beverages industry, to be honest, Vivek. But do you see that, you know, as a marketer and at that time, were you also eyeing those big clients and, you know, thinking they could do something very unique on digital? Like if you say Coke or Pepsi?
Uh, so actually, see, basically, if you ask me, right, digital. So I still remember this conversation I had with and then CMO of I think Coke was Shripad Nadkarni, and the talk was that he said that through hard experience I've learned that we can only target half of India's population. So that time, let's say 1 billion people, so only 5 million people, because the rest of them, 5 million people, can't even afford to buy Coke often enough that it pays for reaching out to them. So they'll buy a Coke on their birthdays or on a sort of specific occasion, etc. But they're not having enough Coke bottles in a year to pay the cost of reaching them. So if you look at it, right, India, I think digital works. In those days, the internet users were probably 15, 20 million users. So for segments like banking, insurance, education, automotive, uh, any areas where we had to, those 20 million people control 50%, 80% of the spends, digital worked really well. But if you take FMCG or, soap or detergents or to a certain extent Coke and Pepsi, that was not a thing.
Yeah.
Actually, it would have worked really well for alcohol industry, but alcohol industry has
the
always
kind
had
of
this
restrictions they have
this surrogate part of it,
Yeah.
and I'm surprised because at the end of the day, I wonder why this industry cannot advertise, because at the end of the day, to a certain extent, most parts of the world you're allowed to advertise.
Yeah.
So this is something which,
Yeah.
in a way, they can have restrictions, but it would be good
to have.
if the advertising marketing industry, because I would love to work in advertising single malts and wine, and I think it's a pretty fascinating industry, right?
Yes,
So
there's so much more which I think the consumer needs to know about the industry overall as well, because there is our induction to any kind of new alcohol happens at the bar. You know, the bartenders are the ones who introduce us to a new whiskey or a new wine or even the new gins now. And I think cocktail culture has come up in a very big way in our country today. But yes, why they don't let people advertise is something even I get very intrigued and different countries and all. You think the whiskey culture in our country, which in last 5 years we've seen with the whole single malts to the like the Indris of the world to like the Amruts of the world, the whole culture is now shifting towards the focus on Indian whiskeys globally. Do you feel that?
yeah. So I tell you, so there's a very interesting book I read a few months ago. It's called The Culture Code.
Okay.
So the book talks about that how each culture has a relationship with an object, which is based on the imprint they've had in their childhood.
Okay.
And based on that, they build up a relationship. And the same object will have different relationships in different cultures and different countries. So let me give you an example. So let's say you take alcohol relationship with a person in a place like France. So in France, what happens is when the kid is 8 to 10 years old, he's actually allowed to taste champagne.
Oh, wow.
He's allowed to dip a marshmallow in it and have it. So they introduce taste as the imprint that the child has with alcohol is taste.
Okay.
But if you take most other countries in the world, including India and let's say US, what happens is the child is not allowed to touch alcohol till the time they turn 15, 16.
Yeah.
In high school, under that point in time, the supervision of parents is no longer there. So what happens is the relationship built with alcohol is to get drunk. It's nothing to do with taste.
Not to taste.
So basically what happens is that you want to get lost.
Yeah.
Right? And because of that, your relationship with alcohol is only to get drunk. It's not about taste. So if you take India to a certain extent, right, the relationship of alcohol with a person in India is very similar. The mother will tell, "Beta, daru ko haath mat lagana."
Yeah.
That
And
whole
the
thing is a very negative connotation of alcohol, and they feel that a person who has alcohol is going to beat up the spouse or act rowdy or be violent or do a lot of things, which may be true, but the fact of the matter is, because a relationship is to get drunk, it's not about taste. That's what it is, right? So a French person or an Italian person would have a glass of wine for lunch, right? And it would be very common here my uncle would say that uh, if you've had a glass of alcohol, you should not come back to the office or the shop.
Okay.
Right? It was a very clear
Yeah. You're
thing that
considered, you can't
because
do any work
you
after
cannot
alcohol.
work, right? And then when I got into advertising, I realized it's not as bad. You can go out with
Work, yeah.
clients and have a glass of wine
Client.
for lunch with them. So I think that is the biggest challenge India
That's
faces,
so
right?
true. That's
There's
so
a very
true.
negative connotation for it, and then what has happened in India is that most people now want to get drunk at the cheapest cost possible.
Possible. Yeah.
So if you take a strong beer or any of the other things, right? What happens is strong beer tastes really bad, right? If anybody's had strong beer, they know how bad it is.
Yeah.
But why is it sold in India? Because it's like the cost to get drunk.
Yeah.
Can you get drunk at 50 rupees instead of 80 rupees? Then you will take that 50 rupee option. It doesn't matter how it tastes. The question is that can it get you drunk?
Or get you out of your skin, and you get a license to little bit act tipsy, and
No, but the thing is that is the cost of getting drunk, right?
Yeah.
Because let's say if a person doesn't want to have alcohol, if he doesn't want to get drunk,
That's true.
right? Because the taste is not a priority. And because of that, what happens is that whiskeys started off where whiskeys would get you drunk faster.
Yeah.
Instead of having like if you have 20 beers, you'll get drunk. You have 3 whiskeys, you could get
It's the
drunk.
cost benefit
Yeah, so
analysis.
simple as that. So that's how it started. But I think as people have evolved,
Yes.
what has happened is that they got introduced to nicer alcohol, they got introduced to culture, they got introduced to people who spoke about wine or spoke about whiskey. I actually had a very interesting story of how I got introduced to whiskey.
I'm very intrigued to know
right?
about it because
Okay.
like I said, you've been traveling the world, but I'm sure your introduction to the whiskey has not been abroad. I'm sure it has been in India.
Okay, so I'll tell you, this is probably a very interesting story and how I got into single malts, right? So basically, I was 24 years old. There's an organization called Reader's Quest. There's a person called Lindsay Levin who brings people, about 30, 40 individuals from different parts of the world on a tour to places like BRIC countries, Brazil, India, Russia, China, right?
Sure.
So they brought them to India. They'll take them to Dharavi. They'll get them to go and meet, in those days, Mukesh Ambani or, Dhirubhai Ambani. They take them to different small entrepreneurs. And one of those small entrepreneurs was me. Okay, so these 15, 20 people landed up in my office, and there was Peter and Grant Gordon, who were the founders of Glenfiddich. Okay, so they landed up in my office.
That's
So what I did
amazing.
was that I thought that I should give them some gift. My father said, these people are coming to your office. So I gave them Fab Mall ka kurtas, right? 299 rupees or 399 rupees. Like I got 15, 20 kurtas and just distributed to all these people, right? But they were damn embarrassed. They had not got me anything. The evening we met for dinner, and they, I think, gave me some 25 or 27-year-old owner's cask reserve of Glenfiddich. Right? And I saw online the price was so much that I could actually, in a way, sell my house and not buy it. Right? So, so like I was like shocked to get such a gift.
Nice.
I thought to myself, I should have given them more kurtas.
And that's how your journey with
Right?
one of the most expensive whiskeys.
So now what happened was that I had
started.
this whiskey. I didn't know anybody who I could give this to, right? Who do you give a whiskey like this to? I had never had whiskey till then. So the first whiskey I had was this. So I read up that you put a few droplets of water in it, maybe 1 cube of ice, or don't put ice in it, and that. And basically, I polished that entire whiskey alone because I didn't even share it with a friend. So like not one day, I took 6 months to finish it off. I would have 1 peg each day, but for 6 months I was having, and that was my introduction to single malts, right?
And that too, reading about it and how to have
exactly,
it. That's
right?
crazy.
So the thing is, I said this is like a God sent introduction to whiskey, because I don't think I know anybody in the world who would have had the first whiskey that they had in their life was a 27-year-old owner's cask Glenfiddich whiskey as a start of their whiskey or single malt
That's a
journey.
story for cheers for like every bar conversation. Cheers. So Vivek, coming to the Indian market that we are in today, the market share of whiskey has always been dominating in our country, compared to beers and other spirits. What do you think is the potential of this overall, whiskey market and, the overall in our country?
So I think what I remember is that I think the whiskey market in India is about $13 billion. Wow. But the price range is 450 rupees to 1,000 rupees. That's the range. That's 90% of the market. 10% if the market is this range which is 2,200 rupees and above. So if you look at it, as middle class becomes upper middle class and it grows larger, and disposable income and people start spending more on experiences, what's going to happen is that is going to change. So what's going to happen is that people travel abroad, they experience nice whiskies. Really good Indian whiskies have come up with Amrit Fusion or Indri whiskey, etc. So what is happening is I'm getting a whiskey which is probably better than the blends that are available to me, right? So that right today, if somebody gives me a choice whether Amrit Fusion or Indri, as compared to a black label or Shivas, I will definitely choose Indri or a Amrit Fusion. So I think that market is going to expand rapidly.
Sure.
So what's going to happen is that 13 billion is also going to expect it to become 22 billion in the next 3 to 4 years. But I think that 10%, which is the 2,200 rupees one, that is going to grow rapidly too. So I think what's going to happen is, so I think I always talk about, if you take India, early days, they came from a place of scarcity. So every single, parent wanted food, shelter, and clothing for their kids. Right? That's how their mind was, because they went through phases where food, shelter, and clothing was not assured.
Sure.
The child today doesn't worry about food, shelter, and clothing. I don't think my daughter or a lot of people ever think about that is going to be a time where I'm going to worry about food, shelter, and clothing.
Sure.
So now what is happening is they're spending monies on luxury with a very abundance mindset about money. So if you take today, when they're going out, they're having nicer whiskeys, they're having nicer wines, they're having nicer alcohol. I still remember when we used to go and party, right? We would buy the cheapest alcohol possible so we can get drunk. But I think
that's
today,
how the old monk culture came in the colleges.
Exactly, right? But now, if you take today, you see, like I still remember my daughter had gone to some party and she said that, it's really bad. They were serving Absolute. I said, like, Absolute is a damn good vodka, right? He said, no. Like, oh, is it? Because for her, it's just Belvedere and Grey Goose, and these are the vodka, the Cirocs of the world, which she's used to. So for her, he said, like, okay, at least I'm glad it was not Smirnoff, right, or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, see, in college days, right, I still remember having Smirnoff, really loving it, and using it to get drunk, or having Old Monk and Coke. Like, that was a staple diet, right? And that's something which I've sort of grown up with. But today, at least that middle class culture, as it becomes more affluent, I think they're going to spend more monies on slightly more expensive alcohol, and their relationship will shift from getting drunk to, in a way, appreciating the nuances of taste. And the relationship that is established with alcohol is more about taste rather than just pure simple getting drunk.
That's so true. That's so true. And like, we still don't have, like, we are still stuck in the whole surrogacy way of advertising, but still, like, when it comes to experiences today in India, there's no dearth for great experiences, especially with alcohol. But tell me, have you had a great experience around alcohol, in India or abroad, anywhere, where you were like an exclusive fine dine and, some great whiskeys or...
Yeah. So, see, now so I sold my company in 2012, right?
Okay.
So, I grew up middle class, and, always I had this aspiration, I'm going to create some wealth. So when you sold, like when I once sells the company, right, then what happens is they don't have to worry about money for the rest of their life. In a way, I know that my basic necessities, luxuries in life that I can afford today, even if I don't spend a single hour doing anything, I'm going to have a similar lifestyle for the rest of my life.
Sure.
So now what I do is I invest a lot of monies in experiences. Whether it's going to the Arctic Circle, whether it's going to the Everest Base Camp, whether it's going and trying out, paragliding in different places, or food experiences, going to Michelin star restaurants. And alcohol for me is a very integral part of my life in those experiences.
Sure.
So whether it's, going to a Suntory distillery in Japan and getting to taste a 31-year-old or 33-year-old Hibiki or 27-year-old Yamazaki. So, you go to Suntory distillery, they don't let you buy anything.
Okay.
But they have all these whiskeys, so you can actually taste all these whiskeys, and they're not very expensive. So, so let's say a 25 Yamazaki will cost you about $15,000, right? One bottle.
Okay.
So if you take 13 pegs, each peg is about $2,000.
Wow.
You can get a 25 Yamazaki, 30 or 60 ml for $80. So instead of $2,000 or $1,000, you're paying $80. So you need 1/10 the price, but you can't buy a bottle. So you can't buy it, but you can drink as much as you want. So now that, I think just going to Suntory Distillery is like almost in my mind, going to the I would say Gangotri of whiskeys, right? Because at the end of the day, this is the origin, right? Japanese whiskeys have now become extremely popular. So that, but I've had friends who, got a 25-year-old Yamazaki and opened it, and 5-7 of us have had it together. Or I've had experience of having a 30-year-old Macallan, and again that experience was phenomenal. So I'm part of organizations that they have groups of wines and whiskeys. I had a chance to go to somebody's house recently. His wine cellar was mind blowing, and we had wines which were, you know, each of the wines were $3,000, $5,000 each. We had another session somewhere.
That's amazing.
We had a session where we actually got somebody who's a champagne expert, and he told us how champagnes are made, and he introduced us to growers, and each of the champagnes were $1,200, $1,500 plus, and it was an amazing experience of understanding nuances of champagnes, and realizing that Dom Perignon and some of these are just average champagnes. They're not the best available out there, and there are so many growers, very limited edition champagnes, and the taste is so different. So I think having these curated experiences, once you have created some wealth, I think is very important, because you also make friends who appreciate finer things in life, and the experience is amazing. And I've had hundreds of such experiences. Every single Michelin star restaurant that I've gone to, they've allowed me to pair nice wines with those dishes they've served us. And luckily, I'm part of groups where they are extremely fond of food, and they curate amazing experiences for us. Like recently, I went to Calcutta, and one of my friends out there, he curated one of the best, like 2-3 meals of my life. And he got chefs to come home, and the chef was preparing dishes originally how the family had prepared it in where they came from, Lucknow and other places. And he had really nice bottles of wine. He had a lot of Tignellos, etc. I'd carried a nice whiskey with me, so we had like 2 days of debauchery with food and whiskey and wine.
Actually, that's the interesting thing that you brought up, that whiskeys and wines, and a lot of people think it goes with French food and only Conti food, but actually whiskeys in India are the palates, if you pair it right, does go well with Indian food as well, because it does, like the sweeter ones tend to enhance the spicy pairs and everything. So it's very interesting.
But the funny part is, right, because our relationship with getting alcohol to get drunk, is because of that we don't pair it with food. You see, most of us, right, don't actually have alcohol after we eat food. Or while we're eating food. But they all want to have whiskey and alcohol first, and then eat food thereafter. Because what happens is, if you eat food first, then you won't get drunk. So basically, that pairing thing doesn't work very well in India, because people want to get drunk with alcohol, right? That's true. But the fact of the matter is that where it's nice wine, nice whiskey, and if you have the taste objective of those drinks, then actually it's much better to pair certain foods with those whiskeys, and it'll give you a very enhanced taste of the food. In fact, I was telling you about this show that I watched. It's called The Drops of God. It's on Apple Plus.
I'm gonna watch
Apple TV, and it talks about how you can pair whiskeys. And so the show is about this father who dies. He's got 87,000 bottles costing $150 million, and he says he's got one student and his daughter, and they do a series of tests, and whoever wins the test is going to get the entire collection of 87,000 bottles and costing 150 million pounds or dollars.
That's crazy inheritance.
Right? So and one of the tests was that a chef makes food, and they have to say, okay, what wine will they pair with that dish?
Okay.
And that was one of the tests that they do.
This is interesting. Apple TV's got got a lot of interesting shows, but a show on wines and inheritance. Wow, this is something I'm going to watch for sure. Thank you for letting me know about that. So Vivek, I'm intrigued, because Indian single malts and whiskies have been actually topping the charts abroad, like be it Amrut, be it Indri. What do you think is the contributing factor to these whiskies getting so popular abroad, and now even in India as well?
I think the contributing factor is very simple. They're good whiskies. So if you take 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if somebody gave me a Indian whiskey, right? The Indian whiskey was so bad that the only way you could actually have it was if you put a lot of soda, a lot of water in it. That's the only way to have it, right? If you take 90% of the whiskey consumption in India happens soda and water because the whiskey is just not good enough to have it on the rocks or just with a few drops of water, right?
Sure.
But if you take Amrit Fusion as an example, right? The first time I had Amrit Fusion, I always had whiskey on the rocks. In fact, today we're trying with a big rock, but otherwise I'll put a small cube of ice or sometimes just a few droplets of water,
Sure.
and that's good enough for a nice whiskey. So Amrit Fusion I could have it with just 1 cube of ice.
Okay.
So it was so nice that you could have it with 1 cube of ice. Same with Indri. So if you take both these whiskeys, so if somebody gives me a choice of having a Black Label or a Shivas or having an Amrit Fusion, I would choose Amrit Fusion all the time.
Wow.
Right? So these are really nice whiskeys. If you look at it, in the whiskey, the cask that they have, there is this, and I think a lot of Indian whiskeys, see, Indians generally have this, in a way, a sweet tooth.
Yes, we do.
Right? So we prefer wheat beers.
Yeah.
We prefer, Cabernet Sauvignons and Malbecs as wine. We will prefer sherry cask in whiskeys. So generally what happens because of that, I think Indri and Amrit Fusion, etc., have understood that and is able to create a much better cask. In fact, Consumer AI has a twin of Indri whiskey.
I was just about to come there.
And we'll talk about it, and maybe I'll show you what the twin answers on Indri
Oh my
whiskey.
God, I'm so intrigued. I'm so intrigued, about the whole thing.
Yeah.
But jumping into the AI part later, first, as a marketer, like you said, we've grown to only get drunk on the whole, alcohol as a thing where you get drunk. Now the preferences are changing, but from the marketing lens, if you had to tell me one or two things, the marketers need to hit as a pain point or something which needs to be driven to the consumers today as a marketing message, what would those few things be like?
See, I think this book, The Culture Code, right, talks about that once you understand it, how do you then, at some level, make some changes in the imprinting at an early age.
Sure.
So he talks about, like, most of the Japanese don't have coffee. It's a very tea culture.
Yeah.
So what they did was they introduced coffee desserts and coffee toffees and sweets and all those things at an early age. So the child got used to coffee.
Okay.
And because of that, they grew up and they continued their relation with coffee. So it took 30, 40 years for it to become a coffee culture.
Yeah.
So the same way, what we start today, right, it will take a few years.
That's true.
10, 20, 30 years before which you're going to have this, right? But I think educating people about wines, taking tours, there are a lot of these companies who are doing these master classes on wine, master classes on whiskey.
Very close to Nasik.
Right? So overall, once you start appreciating the nuances of nice alcohol, right? I think what it does is that, see, once you don't have the relation getting drunk with alcohol, then you can enjoy alcohol more responsibly.
Sure.
You can have it slightly more often and not feel so miserable next day that you don't end up going to the office or you have a substandard day the next day. So what happens is that you can have alcohol once in a while and enjoy it a lot more, right? So the consumption of alcohol can actually increase because when you really get drunk, the next day becomes so bad that you then don't want to drink for a few days, right?
True.
So I think if we can educate people about how alcohol is a very complex process and it takes a lot of art to make nice whiskey or a nice wine or nice alcohol, and that's what people start appreciating, and I think they will start investing monies into buying nicer alcohol, and I think they will also be more responsible towards it, because you're having it for taste, you'll not end up having unlimited quantities, right? Because, and I think at some level this education has to be done where they can do some tests and figure out that all the fears that they have about alcohol, because just imagine, right, every international flight alcohol is allowed, every domestic flight is not allowed.
Not allowed.
The fact of the matter is that every international flight there is a lot more hours, so people can actually get drunk and they can be a bigger nuance, but in 2 hours time, how much time,
how much
you
drink,
right? And the thing, you can restrict it, right? You can have like, okay,
Yeah.
like in 2 hours you're allowed 2 beers or you're allowed 2 whiskeys or whatever
That's
exercise
true.
said, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, it will be so much better
Yeah.
for the alcohol industry.
That's true.
And how many times have we heard that somebody went from here abroad and he created nuisance? The fact of the matter is that whole uh, story that we told, that people have alcohol and they create nuisance,
Yeah.
is in a way, it is not to do with, in fact, most of the people who fly,
Yeah.
chances of them creating nuisance is lesser.
Slightly lesser. Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
So, and the thing is, the same guy is going abroad, right?
Yeah.
The same
Yeah.
guy is going abroad. So,
Yeah.
he's not creating nuisance when he's flying from here to France.
Yeah.
Then why will he create nuisance to go from here to Bangalore? It's like,
That's a very fair point. I hope the aviation industry now takes a note of it, that we have spoken. And but coming back to the, like, how did your journey from being into the service industry, now having like a SaaS and like a SaaS startup, start? I mean, when did the whole transition start? If you thinking about a product again, then a service business.
okay. So, I had sold my company in 2012, right? From 2012 to 2015, 2017, my earnout was going on, and in a way, we really grew almost 12, 15x. So,
Wow.
we actually had a very good earnout. Then, Ashil Vasim, who was my boss then, gave me an opportunity to acquire multiple companies like Socrates Merkel, SV Media, etc., and build a pretty large 1,500 people performance advertising team.
Wow.
So I think I was very happy. I was on different boards of iProspect. We used to travel to Japan often, travel to London often. I was getting to meet some amazing CMOs in different parts of the world. 1,500 people, 4 or 5 CEOs were dovetailing into me. It was an amazing life, right? Then I decided to write this book on happiness, and it's called Happiness is a Muscle, which in the next few months I plan to publish it, because the consumer.ai I've got busy and that has got sort of sidelined. But I wrote one of the lines which I read or I wrote was that happiness comes in the growth phase, it does not come in the phase of stagnation. And next morning I quit Dentsu.
Oh, you quit
Yeah,
then. So
because
after that,
I just
wow.
felt that what I've done all these years, at some level I'm now stagnating, and I need to grow, and that's going to increase my happiness. So that's the time when I decided to start Consumer.ai.
Sure.
So 3 of us came together. Gautam Mehra, who is my co-founder, who is the chief architect of the platform we built. Aman Khanna, I mentioned, who's based in Boston, and we've been friends for 15 years, but he became one of the co-founders. So 3 of us started Consumer.ai. And I think our vision was very simple, that in my mind, because I wanted to grow, I wanted to do things I haven't done before.
Sure.
So I was very clear, I wanted to build a product company. I wanted to build a global company. I wanted to build a company where we started off with $5 million in capital. We raised $3 million plus $2 million. So even before writing the first line of code, we had like $3 million in the bank. So I was very clear, I'm not going to build a bootstrap startup like last time, like what I did with Communicate 2 and iProspect. So I said that whatever we've done in the past, I want to do something new. Oh, that's how the start of Consumer.ai happened. And I also wanted to solve, all 3 of us wanted to solve this big problem. The big problem was, most companies have a very transactional view of the customer, right? So they know what the person bought from them, what price they bought, what the color they bought, what size they bought, what frequency they bought. But any question that you ask, which is outside of that transactional relationship, like do they like whiskey or they like wine? Do they like cats or dogs? Do they like action as a genre, comedy as a genre?
We
Do
don't
they like?
know.
We don't know any of those things, right?
That's
so
true.
we thought that if we can create a platform that taps into 10, 12 of these large platforms in the world. So Google will tell you what people are thinking. Meta, TikTok, Snap will tell you what people are doing. Amazon will tell you what people are buying. Spotify will tell you what people are listening. Reddit and blogs will tell you what they're saying. What if we can connect to all these platforms on a real-time basis? Then we can tell large Fortune 100 companies what their customers are thinking, doing, buying, saying, listening, and that becomes a sounding board for all decisions you take. So currently we work with 95% of revenues comes from the US. We work with Fortune 100 clients. We just signed up with a Fortune 20 client last month, and they've gone live with us. So these are clients who are investing between $300,000 to $600,000 a year with us, and it's just been a phenomenal journey since the time we launched the platform in November 22. So it's just, I'm fortunate. Very few entrepreneurs get it right the second company they build.
Yes.
I've been one of those lucky few
That's right.
who seem to have got it right again.
I think it is also the learnings you've had while growing Communicate to iProspect to meeting all these interesting CEOs, which must have contributed to knowing the pain areas. And truly, it's a very big pain area you guys are solving, because you like being a marketer. Also, I know that there are so many people who follow my social media handles, but I have a blind side, Vivek, when it comes to whether they like anything I post. They don't. Only a like, and you know how Facebook is today. There's so much drop in the organic reach that we don't know. So we need more intelligent places, and glad you built something like that for us to understand marketing, in a
So,
very.
last month we launched something which is called an AI twin.
Okay.
So, what the AI twin does is that it takes your customer segment and creates a persona of that segment.
Sure.
And based on what they're searching for and what they're saying on the internet, it adds it as memory.
Okay.
So now you get this AI twin that basically you can query the twin for any questions you want. So actually created a twin for Indri Whisky.
Yeah. How did
And-
that
and
happen? I mean, I'm very
So,
intrigued.
so there's somebody who I was talking to, he's an investor in Piccadilly, which is the parent company of Indri Whisky. And I was talking to them, I said, okay, you know what, I'm going to create a twin for Indri Whisky. And I speak to him, I'm going to show the Indri twin to that. And we asked the question, okay, what makes you like Indri, etc., etc. So one of the questions that I asked was, which was very fascinating for me to, I got goosebumps when I heard the answer. The question was that when you're not having whiskey, what are the other alcohols options that you consider, and when and why? So it said that when I'm not having whiskey, I generally like some kind of craft gin, flavored craft gin. I also, when I'm partying, I don't mind some vodka based cocktails. But I'm out on a date with my wife, I like red wine, and two wines that I'm fond of is Cabernet Sauvignon and Malbecs.
Wow.
And the funny part is, if you ask me, right, I'm fond of Indri whiskey, I'm fond of sherry cask whiskey, I'm fond of sweet whiskies, and this is exactly my go-to things. It was almost like I was articulating this to myself, because I generally like gin, I like Malbecs and Cabernet Sauvignon. These are my favorite sort of, in a way, red wines. I do have vodka-based cocktails when I'm out with friends and partying. So it was almost like the twin was saying exactly what I would have given as an answer. So the advantage with a twin is that generally what happens is that when you do surveys, right, you sample a few set of people and then you're trying to extrapolate the sample into tens of thousands, which is not accurate, right? So you take 40,000 TV meters and you're taking 150 million households.
Yeah.
Second thing is, it's not real time. So it takes 3 months to get answers. By the time what you wanted the answer for is already done, right? Third thing is, when you ask people, they don't give you authentic answers. So, Dentsu does this survey called Consumer Connection System, and 40,000 respondents, it said that people said they like cooking. When you put that into a platform like ours, it came up that people said they like eating.
Oh,
but nobody wants to answer the question, I like eating, right?
Yeah.
People want to say that they like cooking. So what happens is that you'll never get authentic answers.
That's true.
So observed data is far more accurate than when you ask questions. So the AI twin actually has no problems in telling the truth.
That's true.
If the AI twin says he likes eating, it will say it likes eating. It will not say it likes cooking, right? It will be, and it's logged in data. So basically, if you ask me, this is going to completely transform market research. Because it's deterministic, it's non-biased, it is real time, and it definitely is something that you can do for thousands of segments. Because see, most of the segments in India, right? If you take Oscuro or finding enough people who you can build a sample size of and ask them questions, it's impossible, right?
Yeah, it's impossible.
And the guys who you can even build a sample set, they won't answer your questions for money, right? So if you wanted to spend an hour with me, return for a certain amount of money you're going to pay me, right? I'm not going to spend 1 hour with you, right? So if you were talking about luxury, or you're talking about a 7 Series Beamer, or you're talking about whiskeys, or you're talking about expensive wines, how are you going to build a sample? You just can't build a sample. So now what happens is that this is where the AI tool comes in, that you can actually build a sample and get answers, and those answers will be very accurate, and there is no other way to do that survey and do any kind of market research. So this is the only way to do so. The market research industry is an $80 billion industry. and I'm hoping that consumer.ai's digital AI twin is going to disrupt the industry.
I'm very intrigued, Vivek. It makes me feel that wherever we are today, say shopping, listening, buying, or, consuming, there's a trail digital footprint that we are leaving behind us. And that is what the intelligence of AI is amalgamating overall to create a twin. Is that how it
Yeah.
works?
So basically, what we've decided is, right, we want to do anything which is individual based.
Okay.
So we're going to do everything cohort based.
Okay.
So when you do it in a cohort or segment, what it does is it makes advertising, content, influence selection sort of better for the user.
Sure.
So let's put it this way, right? You take 10,000 people like me. Now, if you show me an ad of Red Label or in a way, something like Peter Scott whiskey, right?
Yeah.
That ad is not relevant for me,
That's
right?
true.
I will not have a Red Label. So if let's say I've been to parties where the Red Label available, I'll have a beer,
Yeah.
right? I'll easily have a gin, right? But the fact of the matter is that you're wasting your advertising dollars on me by showing me a Red Label ad or Peter Scott ad or a Royal Challenge ad, right?
That's true.
And the fact of the matter is that I'm the guy who started with Old Monk, I started with Smirnoff, I started with that, but I'm at a stage of life where I'm not going to have it anymore.
That's true.
So when you understand your customers and you understand my segment, right?
Yeah.
You can show the right ad to the right person.
And
So
there's
it's good
less
for the
wastage.
advertiser
Yeah.
and it's also good for the person.
Yes.
Because just imagine, right? If you keep on showing me ads of a private jet or a $50 million yacht, right? You're wasting your ad on me. I can't afford a private jet or a yacht right now.
Yeah.
So you're just wasting your ad on me, right? Please show it to Mukesh Ambani, show it to Adani, show it to people who can easily afford that right now, right? Similarly, don't show me an ad of Royal Challenge because I'm not going to buy Royal Challenge right now, right? So show me things which are more relevant to me.
Yeah.
So what our AI twin and our technology does is it takes your customers, figures out what is the psychographic demographic of those, and then helps you find more such people. And that I think is useful for you as an advertiser, but it's also useful for the user because they get more relevant ads.
That's true. The ads, and then of course a lot of us know that the ads that we consume eventually does have a decision on our buying, patterns. It's all very scientific and it's already proven. So great, you've actually solved a very big marketing problem, which all marketers face today. And I'm glad. I mean, I can't wait to use it in personal capacity someday. But thank you, Vivek. You're solving a very big problem for the marketers. I must say that. So now coming, this is the parting question that it comes to our mind when AI can take our jobs or take all the marketing and the intelligent work away from the marketeers. Do you think that happening anytime?
It's good, no? So AI takes away all the jobs. I want to sit and have whiskey. I think it seems like a good life. So I'll tell you one thing. So the way I look at it, right? AI is actually very good for entrepreneurs. Because what it does is that if you're making $100 today, if AI does most of the work, then we end up making $200. So very clearly, AI is good for entrepreneurs. See, I think the way I look at it is, right, I think all technologies create some disruption.
Sure.
Right? But brands, companies, they evolve. So I don't think AI is going to take your job away. It's a human who knows how to use AI more effectively than you is going to take your job away.
Gotcha.
So if you can become a partner with AI, a co-pilot, twin, whatever you would call it, right? So this thing, imagine the best chess players in the world are centaurs. Centaurs is half horse, half man. So it's a team of AI and humans coming together.
Wow.
They play better chess than either humans or AI.
Nice.
So that team is what. So basically, if you believe that AI and humans can come together, then you are going to win in work. But if you believe that AI is competition and AI is going to take your job away, then eventually it will. A self-fulfilling prophecy.
Just a parting thing that I was reading because I was coming for this interview on Madira Vogue. I put a question: do you think AI can tell you what are the good drinks to have, on a personal level? And a lot of people answered me yes. So I'm guessing a lot of them are using ChatGPT to make cocktail recipes
No,
at
but I'll tell
home.
you one thing. If you take this whole thing about the Indri Whisky's AI twin, right? imagine that it told me to have Cabernet Sauvignon and Malbec.
Yeah.
Now, this is something which I actually do right now. So, if you like sherry cask whiskies,
Yeah.
chances are you're going to like Cabernet Sauvignon and Malbecs.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, if you like sherry cask whiskies and you've not had red wine, these are the two red wines you should explore with, right?
That's true.
So imagine that is able to create that link.
Yeah.
So if it is so accurate, that means if I wanted to try out wines,
Yeah.
the two grapes I should try in these two grapes, and
Yeah.
that's what AI has recommended.
That's great. So AI does know you better and is able to make your life simpler. Is that what I can leave it with and not get scared because I'm already high on a little bit of good whiskey. So liquid courage is pumping in too. Thank you,
Awesome.
Vivek. So Vivek, I am happy to be part of this whole interviews today. It's been a lovely, lovely experience. But we have a tradition of asking little rapid fire questions towards the end, and this one has multiple choices. And I don't have a big hamper like Coffee with Karan, but I have a small hamper in the end. I'm sure you will want to win it. So starting with the first question, as a founder of a SaaS and an AI startup, what is the most valuable tool for you in the office? And your options are a coffee machine that never runs out of coffee, a AI powered post-it which writes on its own, a clone of yourself for all your Zoom meetings, or a robotic assistant that handles your emails before lunch.
Tough. So I think if my clone can do exactly what I do, so basically they can actually take decisions and manage the meetings and take decisions which are as good as the decision I would take. I think the clone is what I would go for.
Okay, wow. Save time, wow.
For sure. Two is better than one if the clone is as smart as me.
Very, very difficult. The second question is, what does the word AI in your company really stand for? Your options are always innovating, actually intelligent, annoyingly intrusive, inspirationally income.
The first one was,
Always innovating.
I think, always innovating.
What is the third question? What is the weirdest thing you have used an AI bot in the office to answer? Options are an AI bot that tells you a joke when your morale is low, an automating quiz pizza delivery based on team stress, a virtual assistant that helps you practice your TED talks, an AI generated motivational quote that don't quit makes sense.
I think the TED talk.
The TED talk.
Yeah, because I think so many times I've written talks and then I've bounced it off with AI assistants, and then they've come out with some words, some quotes, some stories which definitely have improved my talk.
Wow.
Like I'm giving a talk to IIT Bombay tomorrow. This is a 90-minute lecture in Powai.
Nice.
So that's a good idea. I'm going to use some of the things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to use AI to improve my talk.
Amazing. Now coming to Bollywood, these are some Bollywood questions. If Bollywood is not always been the sci-fi movie genre types, but some of the movies have been there which are in the sci-fi genre, if I may call. Which would you think has been the most tech-led movie out of these movies? Koi Mil Gaya, Ravan, Robot, ya PK?
Actually, I would go with Kalki.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, the recent
Right,
one, of
recent
course.
one. I think so. Obviously, the story was all over the place, and they could have done it better. But the visual effects, to a certain extent, the story, etc. Most people didn't like it, but I actually enjoyed Kalki.
Okay. Yeah, actually, it's the most sci-fi movie
Yeah.
Bollywood ever made.
Yeah.
If you could use an AI to bring one Bollywood actor into a sci-fi universe, who would that be and why? Your options are, of course, King Khan as the leader of the robotic revolution, Deepika Padukone commanding a spaceship in the future, Amitabh Bachchan for as a wise AI-powered supercomputer, or Ranveer Singh playing the intergalactic DJ.
I think Deepika. The sole reason for this, I find her very hot.
Okay. AI can't copy that.
बाकी सब गया.
If Bollywood, the last question, if Bollywood has their own version of Matrix, who would you cast as Neo and why? Ranbir Kapoor, Shahid Kapoor, Vicky Kaushal, or John Abraham?
I think John Abraham.
Oh, and why would that be?
So I think one reason is that he was in Mommy Scottish with me. He's a
Oh.
friend of mine, so I would definitely want him to get the role.
Okay.
And actually, what had happened was his domain name had got squatted by somebody, and I helped him get his domain name back.
Okay.
And he was very generous of mentioning that in one of the interviews he gave. And he's a friend. I bump into him once in a while in Bay Club, etc. So, but I think John, right from school days, right, I've seen that he's a very he has a lot of knowledge on tech. When you have conversations with him, his knowledge about tech, whether it's engineering, whether it's bikes, whether it's internet, whether it's businesses, I think he really gets it.
Nice.
And he's always been fascinated with it, and he's actually one of the smartest guys that I know. So I think he would be a perfect person for such a role.
Nice. Thank you so much for such an honest answer. Thank you. Thank you. And Vivek, you've aced your rapid fire. Thank you so much. The round was so much fun and you gave such amazingly truthful answers. For that, we got your small hamper.
Thank you.
Thank you for
I
being
always
fun.
love these rounds where I'm the only one who can win this. So I'm glad I did. Thank you.
Thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule. I know you have a talk tomorrow. You've just come back from Bangalore, but you took out time for doing this. Thank you.
Sunday evenings are always easier to manage.
Pleasure of drinking this with you. Thank you. Thanks for having us here. Cheers.